Congratulations. You have just popped into existence in the cool, sapphire waters of southern Australia. But before you start celebrating your birthday, I have some terrible news for you. Mother Nature has a very twisted sense of humor, and today, you are the punchline. You are a leafy sea dragon. On the outside, you look like a majestic creature from a high-budget fantasy movie. A masterpiece of camouflage. A literal dragon made of seaweed. But on the inside, you are a biological disaster. Being born as you is basically like being spawned into a high-stakes survival game with zero stats, no weapons, and a costume that makes you look like a giant piece of floating salad. Let us start with your design. Whoever engineered your body was clearly having a mental breakdown. Most fish have scales for protection, powerful tails for speed, and a streamlined body to cut through the water. You have none of that. Instead, you are covered in hard, bony plates that make you about as flexible as a piece of burnt toast. And those beautiful, leafy appendages that everyone loves to take pictures of, they are completely useless for movement. They are just flaps of skin. They do not help you swim. They do not help you steer. They just sit there, making you look like a confused underwater bush. And then there is your swimming. Or should I say, your lack of swimming. You have two tiny, transparent fins on your neck and one on your back. They vibrate hundreds of times per minute, working harder than a jet engine, but they move you forward at the blistering speed of a narcoleptic snail. You are officially the worst swimmer in the ocean. If a hungry predator spots you, your only plan is to sit perfectly still and hope they think you are a piece of trash. You cannot run away. You cannot fight back. You just have to vibrate your little fins and pray for mercy. But wait, it gets worse. Let us talk about your lunch. You do not have a stomach. Yes, you heard me right. Evolution decided that a digestive system was too much of a luxury for you. Because you have no stomach, you cannot store food. This means you have to eat constantly, every single hour of every single day, just to stay alive. If you stop eating, you die. And since you are too slow to chase anything, your hunting strategy is basically just loitering. You have to drift around, pretending to be a plant, and wait for a tiny missed shrimp to be stupid enough to swim near your face. Your mouth is a long, narrow tube that works like a high-pressure vacuum cleaner. When a shrimp gets close, you expand your snout and suck them in with a force that would make a Dyson jealous. But remember, you have no teeth. You cannot chew. You just swallow them whole and hope for the best. It is a miserable, repetitive cycle of sucking up tiny bugs just to fuel a body that can barely move. You are a slave to your own hunger, trapped in a slow-motion nightmare where your next meal is always a matter of luck. And do not even get me started on the weather. For most fish, a storm is just a bit of extra noise. For you, a storm is a mass casualty event. Because you are such a pathetic swimmer, you have no power against the currents. If the ocean gets a little bit grumpy, you are at the mercy of the tide. Every year, thousands of your brothers and sisters are ripped away from their homes and washed up on the beach, drying out in the sun because they were not strong enough to swim 3 inches to the left. You are a leaf in the wind, except the wind is 1,000 tons of water and the leaf is your actual life. If you somehow manage to survive the hunger, the predators, and the literal weather, you eventually reach adulthood. You might think, okay, I made it. Now I can finally relax and find a girlfriend. But this is where the real horror story begins. Especially if you were born a male. In the world of the Leafy Sea Dragon, the traditional roles of parenting are not just swapped, they are weaponized. You are about to learn that in this family, the father pays the ultimate price. Imagine you meet a lovely female dragon. You do a little dance, you mirror her movements. It is all very romantic. But instead of a box of chocolates, she gives you a massive burden. She produces around 250 bright pink eggs. And instead of laying them in a safe nest or a hidden crevice, she glues them directly onto your tail. She literally cements her children to your body. And once the transfer is complete, she swims away to live her best life, leaving you to deal with the consequences of her choices for the next 9 weeks. Now remember your amazing camouflage? That perfect leafy disguise that keeps you safe from hungry mouths? Well, kiss that goodbye. You are now carrying 250 glowing, pink neon signs on your backside. You look like a floating birthday cake. Every crab, every snapper, and every hungry bird can see you from a mile away. You are no longer a hidden piece of seaweed. You are a mobile buffet with a giant sign that says free food. For the next 2 months, you have to survive with a target on your back, carrying a weight that makes your already pathetic swimming even more difficult. Every day is a gamble. You have to find enough food to feed yourself without a stomach, while also protecting a literal army of babies glued to your skin. If you get caught, it is not just you who dies, it is the entire next generation. The stress alone should be enough to kill you, but you have to keep vibrating those tiny fins, day after day, week after week. You are a tired, hungry, glowing father who just wants a nap, but the ocean does not give naps. It only gives threats. Finally, after 9 weeks of carrying this neon pink target on your back, the dreaded time comes. You might think that childbirth for a fish is just a matter of dropping some eggs into the water and swimming away, but no. Nature decided that you have not suffered enough yet. You have to physically birth every single one of those 250 babies. For 2 to 3 entire days, you will go through an excruciating, grueling labor process that will drain every ounce of your energy. Because the eggs are deeply glued into the spongy, swollen tissue of your tail, they do not just naturally slip out when they are ready. You have to force them out. You have to aggressively contort your stiff, bony body into strange shapes. You pump your abdomen with violent spasms. You have to actively thrash your tail against sharp rocks, rough corals, and abrasive seagrass just to scrape your own children off your body. You rub your skin raw. Every single baby requires a massive physical effort to release, and you have to do this 250 times in a row. This is not a quick, magical moment of creating life. This is a multi-day marathon of pure exhaustion and agony. Your tiny, transparent fins are vibrating furiously just to keep you stable in the water while you smash your own body against the reef. By the time the very last baby finally detaches from your flesh, your tail is completely scarred, swollen, and entirely depleted of all its nutrients. You are nothing but a hollow, traumatized shell of the magnificent Leafy Sea Dragon you once were. You sink down into the dark kelp forest, physically exhausted, eternally starving, and completely vulnerable to any predator that happens to swim by. If a hungry snapper finds you right now, you do not even have the energy left to try and blend in with the background. You would just accept your miserable fate and let yourself be eaten, because fighting back is simply impossible. Now, let us take a moment to talk about your children. The tiny, fragile little lives that you just tortured yourself to bring into this cruel world. When a baby Leafy Sea Dragon is first born, it is incredibly pathetic. It is about the size of a grain of rice with a few tiny green threads attached to its back. They are completely independent from the exact second they leave your battered tail. But in the ocean, independent usually just means completely abandoned and defenseless. They have a massive, heavy egg yolk attached to their bellies that will feed them for the first few days of their lives. But this yolk also acts like a giant biological anchor. It weighs their tiny bodies down and makes them incredibly clumsy and uncoordinated. They try desperately to hide in the weeds, but they do not have your complex leafy camouflage yet. They do not look like poisonous plants or dangerous creatures. They just look exactly like tasty, bite-sized snacks floating helplessly in the open current. The ocean shows absolutely zero mercy to these tiny, helpless babies. From the moment they are born, a massive, brutal massacre occurs. They are hunted and eaten by literally everything that has a mouth. Small crustaceans snatch them right out of the water with their claws. Other small reef fish swallow them completely whole, without even chewing. Even mindless filter feeders accidentally consume them because they are so incredibly small and completely unable to swim away from danger. The slaughter is swift, violent, and absolutely relentless. Within just a single week, the vast majority of your precious children are completely gone. They have been turned into fish poop. You risked your own life, compromised your perfect camouflage, starved yourself, and endured days of agonizing physical labor for a batch of babies that mostly just serve as a free appetizer for the local reef population. Out of the 250 neon pink eggs that you carried for months, statistics show that maybe 1 or 2 of them will actually live long enough to reach adulthood and reproduce. You played the ultimate biological lottery with your own life as the currency, and the only prize is just keeping your doomed species from going extinct for one more miserable generation. And let us not forget about your complete lack of social life or any form of meaningful communication. You do not have vocal cords. You cannot bark, you cannot chirp, you cannot even make a tiny bubble-popping sound to warn others of danger. You live your entire life in absolute, total silence. When that hungry crab is slowly crawling towards you with its claws raised, you cannot scream for help. You just have to sit there in silence, shaking your little fins and accepting the inevitable. You do not form complex schools like other normal fish to protect each other. You are a solitary, lonely creature wandering the underwater forest entirely by yourself. The only time you ever truly interact with another member of your own species is during that brief, deceptive mating dance that ultimately ruins your life anyway. The isolation is truly profound. You are surrounded by a vibrant, bustling ocean ecosystem filled with dolphins communicating and whales singing. But you are just a silent, floating spectator trapped in a leafy prison of your own making. Think about the sheer, profound unfairness of this entire existence. You are a fierce marine predator that cannot actually hunt anything. You are a fish that lives in the ocean but cannot actually swim. You are a brilliant master of disguise who gets forced by nature to wear a glowing pink neon sign for a quarter of the year. And you are a dedicated father who sacrifices his own body and safety for children he will never know, and who will almost certainly die violently within their first few hours of life. Your entire existence on this planet is a delicate, intensely stressful balancing act where the odds are always stacked heavily against you. Every single time you use your snout to suck up a tiny little missed shrimp, you are really just buying yourself a few more hours of this miserable, hungry existence. Every time you sway back and forth with the ocean kelp, you are just praying that the cold, unfeeling universe ignores you for one more day. You cannot ever migrate to warmer, safer waters because you are too weak. You cannot fight for territory or defend yourself because you have no weapons. You cannot even enjoy the simple pleasure of a good, large meal because you do not have a stomach to hold it in. You are permanently trapped in a very narrow strip of cold coastline in southern Australia, just waiting for a random storm to wash you away onto the dry sand, or waiting for a bigger, faster fish to finally notice you through your disguise. You are the ultimate tragic example of evolution prioritizing aesthetic looks over actual biological functionality. You are a walking, or rather, a very slowly drifting piece of absurd modern art. You are incredibly beautiful to look at through a camera lens, but you are completely, mathematically useless in the brutal reality of the wild ocean. So, the next time you feel like your human life is too hard to handle, the next time you want to complain about having to wake up early for a boring job, or having to sit in annoying traffic on the highway, or having to eat leftover food from the refrigerator because you are too lazy to cook, just take a deep breath and take a moment to think about the male Leafy Sea Dragon. Think about the exhausted, starving father who has no stomach, who has to vibrate his tiny little fins thousands of times a day just to stay in one place, who has to carry hundreds of glowing pink eggs on his tail, making him a massive target, and who has to violently smash his own body against the sharp rocks just to give birth to babies that will almost immediately get eaten alive. Your human life could definitely be much, much worse than it is right now. You could have been born as a piece of floating salad with a terrible destiny and a non-existent stomach. If you enjoyed this dark, deep dive into the miserable, unfair reality of the ocean and want to see more content like this, do not forget to hit that subscribe button to support the Nerixy channel right now. Please like this video, share it with a friend who constantly complains and thinks they have it rough, and make sure to leave a comment down below telling me which unfortunate, pathetic animal you want me to brutally expose next time. Until then, stay safe out there in the world, and be very glad that you have a functional stomach.